So today we're going to talk about a question that I get all the time, which is what is the amount of money that we need in order to retire comfortably? And so we're going to talk about, someone sent an article to us. We're going to talk about what are the numbers, averages as far as how much people have saved. What do you need to save in order to retire comfortably?
That's a good question.
So it's a fun one. I'm Ian Weiner, certified financial planner. This is my partner, Todd Watley, certified elder law attorney. We blend personal finance and estate planning together in what we think is a pretty unique way. But let's jump right into the video here.
Yeah. So, I get people all the time who, it's always funny. I'm like, how much do you have? They're like, not much. That's always the answer.
Yep.
Not much. Not much can be truly not much, $300 in the bank. And sometimes it's, 3 million, 13 million, still not much, but that varies between people. And I'm sure there is a good answer based on something. And I'm anxious to learn this.
So there's a lot of different things that we can talk about here. We're going to hit a couple key things.
Okay.
The first thing that we're going to hit is someone sent us an article about just the general bands of wealth at retirement and what is, kind of on the low end, what's on the high end, and what's a percentile basis, what that looks like.
Sure.
On the lower end, obviously, is going to be around $30,000 to $40,000. That's for retiring, that may not go very far. And really what's important in retirement is income more than assets. And so, I can think of a couple of clients who they don't have a ton of assets, but they have really high incomes from pensions and Social Security.
Retired California teacher.
Yeah, these can be,
$5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month.
And so it's not so much the number, it's what do you actually spend and what do you need to sustain your lifestyle. So, that's an interesting one. This tends to be what more people that consider themselves normal to be is between 150 and 500,000, depending on where they're at in retirement. Retirement is not really a straight line. It's kind of a bell curve in terms of spending and assets, So people tend to have more assets, either at the beginning or the end of retirement, and kind of in the middle is where it tapers off because we're spending more and there's different expenses.
Yeah. People, when they first retire, they've been tied down to a job and they're like, hey, let's travel, let's do stuff. Probably the first quite a few years are expensive.
In a lot of ways, that's typically the case. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, though, because and you see this a lot, working with folks who are, kind of rounding that corner of their life. Sometimes health is not as strong, and so people oftentimes a mistake that some people make is they oversave. And they underspend and they don't spend their time and they don't spend their money on the things that they enjoy doing with the people they enjoy doing it with.
Yeah.
That's a big issue. We'll do a whole show.
We could do a whole show on that, but you only live once. Okay. Go do stuff. Your kids, they'll be fine. They're making their own money. They'll be fine. Go enjoy your money. And most decent kids would agree with that.
Yeah. And it's about making a plan though, So someone asked me, okay, what does it mean, to be rich in retirement? What is the determination of rich? And so based on this article that someone sent, affluent is another word that's typically, used for rich. That's between $500,000 and $1.5 million. And so I think that's a reasonable benchmark. And it depends on, where you live, whether that really spends like that. There's a lot of outputs that go into that. Beyond that, wealthy is $1.5 million plus, and then very wealthy. This article considered 2.5 to 5 million plus as very wealthy.
Sure.
And candidly, I've worked with folks all across that spectrum and way beyond that. And what really matters in retirement is not so much the number. I wanted to talk about this. We had to do a video on what's the right number.
Sure.
But really, the right number is different for everyone based on your different facts and circumstances. It's how much do you spend? It's really what it comes down to.
Aren't there some guidelines? So if someone sitting there today is approaching retirement, if they did a budget and said, we spend this much money, isn't there some kind of percentage to say, okay, you're going to spend this much, this percentage of what you spend now in retirement as a general rule, and so therefore you need this much money?
So this is one we should also do probably a whole other
Okay.
one on this. What most people know is this measurement tool is called the 4% rule.
Okay.
I say rule in quotation marks because it's not a rule.
Suggestion.
It's a suggestion.
Okay.
There's a guy named Bill Bengen who decided that this was he was doing a test in 60s, 70s, and there's been a lot of research about this. The 4% rule is really designed to figure out what is the safe withdrawal rate on a portfolio.
Okay.
And so they use a 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. And they look at, okay, over what period of time, let's say you had $1 million to start and you withdrew 4% at the beginning of each year, at what would be the maximum amount that they would be comfortable with where you wouldn't run out of money in a 30-year retirement?
Okay.
That's essentially the way that the 4-year rule works.
Okay.
And it takes into account asset growth rates, volatility, and inflation.
Okay.
And so that's the benchmark that most people use.
Okay.
There's a number of problems with it. The biggest one, and this is all I'll say today, is that's a very cookie cutter answer. That gets you an idea.
It's a general guideline.
And so the other way to reverse that to know whether or not you've kind of hit the number is 25 times your spending. If you've saved 25 times your spending, that's a good way to know that you have enough money to
annually?
retirement. So let's say you spend $100,000 a year annually. Well, $2.5 million would be the asset level that you would want to have to feel like you could retire comfortably.
Okay. That's cool.
Now, there's a lot of other factors that go into that. Okay. So that's not advice. I want to make sure that we're clear on that. But the idea is you've got to know really what you spend in order to figure out what the right number is. And that translation is, how do we turn assets into income? This is the challenge of retirement. Is people save assets, but they have a challenge converting those to income in a way that's sustainable, that they're comfortable.
That's where we come into play.
That's the challenge. And so if that's something that you're not sure if you've saved the right amount, you think you might have oversaved, you need help getting towards retirement and figuring out whether you're ready to make that transition, you can click the link below. We can schedule a free consultation. We'll talk through that with you. We'll ask you a few questions that will help to clarify that.
Sure.
But I think what's really important in this video is that there's not one set number for everyone.
Right.
And the thing that we really find when folks do planning and they get through this phase, this is like in the pre-retirement phase really, is what can I do? How much can I spend? Do I have the right asset mix? Am I thinking of this the right way? When do I take Social Security? These are all big questions that how are we going to deal with long-term care if that comes up? How are we going to deal with taxes? These are all really good questions that you need to ask and answer before you retire if you want to really have peace of mind.
Yeah, that's what we can do for you. You need to sit down with a professional who can do that. And I'll just throw in, this is not the topic of this, but make sure that your estate plan is in place.
Yeah, it's huge.
That's where I come in, is make sure that when you die, what you have goes as efficiently as possible where you want it to go. And you need a good estate planning attorney to do that for you.
So this is just one video, one simple way. We don't have a ton of time to go into all the details here. This is one way to begin to benchmark whether or not you're on track to be able to retire with an asset level that you're comfortable with. But what I would encourage you is, don't worry about these cookie cutter numbers. Make a plan that fits for your scenario. How much you need to spend, how much you can save. Make sure you have an asset mix that you're comfortable with. And if you need help with that, click the link below. We can talk through that with you and look forward to seeing you on the next video.
Thanks.